We are approaching the quarter mark of the NBA season, and let's check in on those rookies, starting, of course, with the Rookie of the Year debate, Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. Welcome to Chucking Darts, a podcast of informed, rigorous, reckless, harmless, speculative, and fun predictions about the game we love. You can call me Chuck. This is episode number 186. Number 185 was a college basketball draft episode looking at the Pac-12. That was with Zach Milner, formerly of the Stepien and the Tag the Roll podcast. Gets credentialed to a lot of Pac-12 games. So we've talked about Isaiah Collier, Kobe Johnson, Jalen's younger brother, Cody Williams, Jalen Williams' younger brother, Tristan Da Silva, Kylan Boswell, KJ Simpson, KJ Lewis. So, and got into a lot of guys there. I think the Pac-12 is a very dart-rich conference this particular cycle. Obviously, the good news that just came out is that Bronny James is going to be able to debut sometime in the next week or so. So hopefully the conference stays, top of mind with those players performing well. But this is an NBA episode, and back on the show, my good friend, Sporting News' own Steph Noh. Steph has been doing great work early this year, both on his research on defense. He posted a top 100 individual NBA defenders article that got a lot of traction, which I'm very happy for. And he wanted to come on and talk Rookie of the Year, and he did not have to twist my arm very hard to do so. So, Steph, welcome back, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, you've got some really great guests that you have lined up on the show. You're telling me before we started recording, you had Larry Golden, my good friend, great Bulls person, and I love Zach's work. So, gonna have a high standard to keep here.
That's right, man. But you've already set a very high bar. They're still talking about the All-Star episode you did, last winter when you're like, you know what, Porzingis is an All-Star. I remember that, and now look at Porzingis now. He will probably be an All-Star on the best team in basketball this year. So
I think we were hyping up Franz in that episode too, which is looking pretty good.
hell yeah, man. And so let's get to the hype. Let's get to the hype. Rookies this year are awesome. Now, that means literally nothing coming from me because every single year I will say the same thing. But this year, especially between Wembanyama and Chet, it's rare that you get two guys above 7 feet tall in the same draft class that stick out so immediately in their role, and in Chet's case, for their role on a winner. So let's sort of take the address the elephant in the room, or just sort of take the sting out of it right away. Do you have any issue at all in sort of analyzing their performance one versus the other with the fact that Chet was drafted in 2022? Do you think there's any sort of shenanigans about whether or not he's a true blue rookie? Do you discount his performance at all?
I mean, I think you have to take it into consideration, but as far as, who wins Rookie of the Year, not really. Like, I do think that Chet has some advantages in that he's seen these teams, he knows what life in the NBA is like, but I mean, yeah, he still has not played a game, right? That's like the definition for going by the book of a rookie.
Good. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I kind of led you into the if you don't answer that way, I'm going to yell at you thing. I promise I was not going to do that. But just to get that narrative out of the way, I think he does have some advantages, but I also think that it's a little naive to think that anyone in Chet's spot would be doing as well as Chet, number one, which is sort of the subtext of what is now a straw man argument, since we agree. And number two, the Thunder with Chet on the floor and Shea off are still a positive team. So that, honestly, it's not as though they don't have other good players. They obviously do. But that really sort of tells you all you need to know about whether or not Chet is really being propped up. And if you anyone who watches him knows that isn't the case either. So I'm very happy to consider Chet a rookie, and I think that he, for my money, is clearly leading this Rookie of the Year race. Do you have any do you lean Wemby just for what he has shown, or does your criteria differ in terms of it's not necessarily impact, but maybe you base it on projection? Like, what are you thinking for Roy right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would just go with the player that had the best rookie season. I mean, you can end up with some pretty zany results using that kind of judging method. Like we had Brogdon winning it over Joel Embiid famously, which that probably was not the result that you were looking for, but Brogdon was really good that year. What are you gonna do? And Embiid didn't really play that much. So yeah, I mean, I think that Wemby is probably the better prospect. I don't think that's a hot take. But not only has Chet been the best rookie in this class, I mean, when you look at his production and just, I mean, put aside the numbers, if you just watch him play, I mean, this guy has been the best rookie. I don't even know in how long. Like, I think he's been the best rookie you could say maybe, you know, since Luca. Is that fair?
Yeah, probably. I would, yeah. I mean, now that you mention it, yeah. Last year, rookie of the year was Paolo, and then Jalen Williams was sort of the efficient alternative, certainly better than both of those. 2021 rookie of the year was Barnes. Barnes and Mobley were both very good, but and then you can get into the issue of how much does Chet's team help him. But I have no problem saying that he's playing better than either one of those two did. Has to hold up over the rest of the year. And let's just get to
Sure.
his percentages because they are
He's
50, 54, 43, 87.
yeah, it's absurd. I mean, no rookie has ever even come close. Actually, his teammate, Cason Wallace is like the only rookie that's kind of close to making the 50-40-90 as a rookie. Cason Wallace just has not missed a shot, it seems like.
Yeah.
But for a rookie to do that, I mean, like the list of players is like Larry Bird, Steve Nash. It's just like totally crazy that he is
Yeah.
shooting the ball this well.
Yeah. And it's honestly what has surprised me the most is how smooth the shot has translated at volume
Yeah.
immediately. Like, I'm a big believer in the player that you show in your NBA, your pre NBA tape is the player you try to be immediately. Like you lean on what you prefer, you lean on what you think you do well. And Chet's 3-point like efficiency was great at Gonzaga in his 1 year, but his volume was kind of like middling. He liked to get into the 2-point area and sort of operate there. So I thought that this season there would be an adjustment about him sort of passing up certain threes and not really letting it fly. He obviously doesn't have any issue with that. And I think the other sort of narrative around him that has sort of superseded whatever his numbers were at Gonzaga is just his confidence and just like, well, if I need to shoot threes, I'm going to shoot threes. I'm not going to be precious about this. And it's obviously a reinforcing cycle when they start to go in all the time. He's going to feel fine about shooting it a bit more frequently. But I think the big difference, apart from efficiency, because he and Vic's numbers are pretty similar, but the efficiency is not. The big difference between them is that Chet is playing five. He is playing like true five for his team, which apart from him is basically undersized. They like to play smaller and switch a lot, except, when he's involved in the action. Whereas the Spurs made the very intentional choice of starting Wembanyama alongside Zach Collins to keep him out of the middle of all of those defensive actions. And I think there's a number of reasons why they chose to do that. I think it's certainly a valid strategy. But I also think that it makes it harder for Wembanyama to like get really easy buckets when you are just sort of basically a supersized wing on the outside of a basic action. Or if you are on one side of the pick and roll, you have Collins maybe in the dunker spot, or if he's trying to space out and play five out, his defender's sagging. Like it's just not the same as being the center in with all of like normal NBA spacing around you like the Thunder have. So I think that is probably working to Chet's advantage a little bit too. What has stuck out to you about Chet's play?
What has stuck out? I mean, like you mentioned, just the willingness to pull. His release is pretty high. So it's like even his mid-range pull-ups, which he's been pretty good at. Like he's just able to get to that shot whenever he wants. And I think it's So I didn't watch like a ton of his college tape. So all this stuff is like coming as kind of a pleasant surprise to me. Like his passing is pretty good too. It's 2.7 assists per game. Like when you see bigs in the league with that amount of assists, a lot of times they're just like fake assists, they're just like handing it off to some guy who's taking 8 dribbles and getting in the lane for layups. Like I don't really see that too much with Chet. I think that he's not making crazy passes necessarily. He did have a really slick one, behind the back pass on a fast break. I can't remember who he hit, but it was a beauty. But he's making the one read, two read passes. They're just like really nice dump offs in the Thunder system. Usually they have a guy stationed in the corner, guys cutting a lot in their offense. He's been pretty good at hitting cutters. So that's really impressed me about Chet. The other thing that's impressed me is his handle. Like I did not think that he goes to a spin move like pretty frequently. And then he just has like really high skill level. So when he does get some separation off the dribble, his footwork is unreal. I mean, I can't believe how good his footwork is at his size.
Mhm.
And also he pairs like a pretty nice up and under move that he uses to get space a lot too. So just like yeah, like you talk about these bigs that have guard skills all the time. And a lot of times when you make that comparison, it's just like about the fluidity that they play with. But
Mhm.
actually like having that high skill level, I think that's much more rare. And yeah, I've been super impressed watching him, seeing obviously that he has put a ton of work into his game.
Yes. Yeah. Extremely hard worker. Everything that Chet sort of says he is, he definitely is. And the point about the guard skills is a very good one because you know, all the questions, to the extent that there were questions about Chet coming into the draft, have to do with his frame and is he going to hold up and all of this. I I'm not going to say that did not matter to me. I finished with Chet second in that draft, and he goes and gets drafted number 2. But his when you are that slender, you can see how just sort of freely he moves and uninhibited he moves. When he gets, you mentioned his spin move. One of the reasons he really likes that spin move in the lane is because it gives him a natural finishing angle when he executes it, because his just turn radius is so big with how much ground he covers that chances are on the other side of that, there's not going to be a hand waiting to swat a shot away. And when you
Yeah.
couple
His
his reach,
wingspan too, like it's right at the rim. As soon as he finishes that spin, it's pretty crazy.
right, and his touch is so good, which his numbers obviously indicate, that is close to, unless you get him on the dig, like if he gets to his finishing angle, like it's over. He's going to
Yeah.
hit that shot over and over again. And there are just little examples of that throughout his game. You mentioned his release point as well. So it's he is really fun to watch, really, really good. And OKC is such a perfect fit for him because of how they play defense, which is another difference. Not that San Antonio is a bad fit for Wemby, but it's another difference between the two contexts, because Oklahoma City's been installing this defensive infrastructure for a while now, before Chet ever debuted, about making sure they got perimeter guys who are going to be able to cover ground and force closeouts and sort of encourage drives. And then once the drive has begun, all of them can stay in front. All of them can, rip and dig and help. And they all just sort of organically sag into the paint. And OKC's bet, at least to my eye, game after game is, look, we drive more than any other team in the NBA. We are going to make you drive as much as possible. And essentially, our bet is that we're better at driving than you are. And that we're going to be able, as long as we force you to drive and everyone knows that they're trying to basically sag to make drives as uncomfortable as possible, particularly for players who maybe are the third or fourth or fifth option in a given lineup and aren't that good at driving. We think the math is going to bear that out. And they're correct. It certainly does. It's just such an intentionally built team that it's not that Chet's job is easy, but it was defined. And that's the main difference, is that, San Antonio, for Wembanyama, his role is not really defined. And if you watch any given game, he'll try so much random stuff on the court. And like sometimes it pops and it looks incredible. Like he will do incredible things every game, but it's not as though you see a consistent like type of execution that is expected of him possession to possession to possession. And that starts with, the whole Sohan at point, and is this the right thing or not? Like what do you think about all of that, about sort of the situation Wembanyama has been put in?
Well, I mean, they've come out and said that, yeah, like this is their year of just trying stuff out, seeing what they have. I think they're like not trying to really put Vic in a box. But what that leads to is a lot of sloppy play. I'm pretty sure they're last in the league in wins, right?
I think Detroit owns
Oh
that
yeah, Detroit,
distinction.
yeah. But I mean, but the Spurs are, right down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, you mentioned before that they're trying to protect him by playing him a lot with Zach Collins and Bassey, you know, letting him take some of these smaller matchups. But he has played some five. I think it's interesting, like especially at the close of games, he's
Mm-hmm.
been really good in that role. The other day too, he played against Jokic, and he held up pretty good. Like Jokic got up a couple times, of course, because he's Jokic, but he also he just had a lot of trouble scoring over Vic, and I think that's cool. I definitely didn't expect that to be able to like, slow down this guy. I actually wrote a story a couple months ago on like who is the Jokic stopper in the league, and I looked at like all these defensive stats for all the centers, and like if you could hold Jokic to 60% shooting, that was like a great job. It was interesting. Actually, like the best guy was Wendell Carter because he's got some good length and good size. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and LeBron was the other guy that was really, really good on Jokic, but doesn't have the capacity to do it for very long periods anymore.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think the guys that this is kind of like a tangent, but the guys that defend Jokic really well are the guys with like pretty good reads of where he's going to pass the ball. And Wembanyama, like he got his hands on a couple passes there. Like I thought that was a good sign too. Yeah, as far as just like his fit, like what you were talking about. I mean, obviously, um, just playing with Sohan at point is like it's not great. I understand why they're doing it. Like a lot of people are very against it. I think it's fine. But minutes where he's played with Trey Jones, if anybody has watched, it's been a lot better. They don't have anyone aside from Jones that can throw him a lob pass, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of important. I mean, I do think that like people kind of lean on that a little bit too much though, because when you look at the numbers of how he played overseas, like I believe 40% of his shots were jump shots in
Mm-hmm.
France. So, the fact that he is still settling for a lot of jump shots and he's not really shooting very well, same thing in France. I think he was under 30%, under 30% in the NBA too. So that stuff I think was like kind of predictable. And again, like I mean the guy's 20, right? Like he's gonna
Not
figure that stuff
even.
out.
Yeah, I don't think he's 20 until January or
Okay.
February. Yeah.
Yeah, this is his age 20 season basketball. I think that's like February 1st, they have to be 20 for
Well,
basketball reference.
well,
But yeah, I think it's normal. Like it's fine. But again, like I think that is not as much the Spurs system as just like who he was coming into the league.
well, all very good points. And I think, for the people, I agree with you about the Sohan thing, by the way. I also think it is fine. And I think a sort of subtext to it is that it'd be great if Vic spent so much time catching lobs and finishing them and getting all this easy money. He's currently shooting, I think, 51% on twos, which is like laughable if you're Victor Wembanyama and that's the best that you can do. But it speaks to, like I said, he's basically a supersized wing a lot of the time. And so, in addition to not necessarily getting a lot of lob passes, he's getting a lot of opportunities to create on the perimeter. And going back to what I said on about, the player that you are pre NBA is the player at least you lean into being initially. Like, I think people just need to understand Victor like wants to create on the perimeter. That is what he likes to do. That is what I think he sees himself as becoming a dominant version of, is this sort of Durantish kind of shot maker. And that's not to say he has the same level of shooting talent as Durant. I mean, that's hyperbolic, but he has a lot of shooting talent. I mean, his touch at his size is crazy. You just, again, you watch him hit a few threes and you see how pure it looks. And it just sort of, like everything else, it sort of astonishes you. So that type of player, though, is a notoriously slow developing player. An ISO perimeter big wing creator. I mean, no matter which one you pick, go look at Durant's first season in the league when he was, really skinny and in Seattle, and his numbers were extremely inefficient. So it takes a very long time to do that, number one. And I think that the combination of those are a lot of the shots that Vic is pursuing. So he's going to take some bad ones, and his surrounding personnel sort of gets you where he gets you, but he's still at, 19, 10 and, 2.5 blocks a game, 2.5 assists. I watched that game with Denver that you mentioned, and I think it wasn't, though I think Victor's anticipation is on defense is like good, like fine to good. It's just, you could see in real time Jokic going through like the Wemby experience, where like he just throws a pass that's going to be like perfect in any other time, and Vic just goes like boop, and Jokic is like, what? Or like Jokic will put a shoulder in him and go to a baby hook, and Vic will still block it, and he's like, well, that doesn't happen any other night of the week. So it, like, I don't think anyone is really worried about Wembanyama. I think most of the grousing goes about how he's used, but if he were used at 5 more, if he were placed in that sort of Chet-ish role of being at 5 more, maybe that's the right thing for his long-term development. It's possible, but I think you would see a decrease in sort of the ISO creation that I think Vic still wants to really explore about himself. So that's my only point, is that I think part of this is stuff that Vic is wanting to try and wanting to explore about his game.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you brought up the Durant comparison. The one that I would make is Kristaps Porzingis, who, when he was a rookie with the Knicks, he shot 33% from 3. Took him a while. It was actually kind of cool. Like, I heard that he is one of the players that embraces analytics the most. So he kind of learned like how to fix his shot profile, which threes to take, which ones not to take. And, he's up to like 36% on his career now. So I think that, especially like, I think people kind of discount how difficult it is to adjust to a further back line for the NBA.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not really worried about his shot at all. Like, his form looks good. He's taking some crazy ones. He'll probably have to reel that in at some point, but yeah, I think he'll be fine.
And another thing is, like, he was also allowed to experiment a lot in his league in France before, last year. And part of that is figuring out just sort of the rhythms of your own sort of ISO game, because there can be great ISO players that pass out of their isolations and sort of develop their playmaking. But when you watch Vic now, you can sort of tell maybe a second before he does something, 1 to 2 seconds, that he's already kind of made up his mind that this is going to be a shot, or this is the move I'm going to do. He'll have like an awkward Euro that he doesn't need to take because he's made up his mind that he's already going to a Euro. That just sort of predetermination, which is not uncommon in young players, but that's the kind of stuff that is a turnover this year that might be an assist next year. And his ATO right now is negative. Another difference between him and Chet. So no one's worried about him, but I think that is some of the reason for the stuff. And I think the Spurs know what they have, and they know that this is going to take time. And so I think if it costs him rookie of the year, then okay, but he'll probably be like an all-star next year, and then no one will really care that any of this happened. So, which makes for a great episode. But what other what Chet or Wemby thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think the offensive stuff for Wemby was pretty expected. And for both of these guys, I think the much more interesting part is their defense. I mean, it's so rare for especially like young rookies like them. I mean, I know Chet has been whatever, like he sat out his rookie year, but or his first year, but he's still like a pretty young player, pretty young rookie. For those guys to step in and just be like awesome, awesome defenders is pretty cool. Especially Vic. I mean, this guy's definitely winning at least one defensive player of the year award, right? Like the things that he does
Yeah.
are just totally insane. And he's making mistakes in his technique. You know, he's letting guys get by him sometimes, but just the raw tools he has, he cleans up so much stuff. It just covers for so many things that he does. And guys are like terrified to shoot whenever they're near him. I mean, he like totally broke Andrew Wiggins in preseason.
Dude,
And
oh yeah, that game was insane. That first quarter he had, oh man, the crowd didn't know what they were watching, and neither did the Warriors. It was unbelievable.
yeah, so the stuff he's doing on defense is really special, I think. And with Chet too, I mean, I think both of them are, I think they're like fifth or seventh each in blocks per game for rookies. That's just again super, super impressive. Chet's blocks are cool too. I think it was uh Tom Haberstroh that pointed this out initially, that like he's doing these Duncan style of blocks where he's just tipping them and keeping them in play.
Mm.
No, he's not swatting them into the fifth row, which adds value, you know, for your team. Um, yeah, multiple efforts too from Chet to get into plays, I think is really impressive.
And
What do you have any defensive thoughts on either of these guys?
sure, yeah, I think that number one, Chet's overall defensive feel is better, which is part of the reason why I think he has taken to playing center so easily. And I think it was probably part of the Spurs calculation in having Wemby be sort of like this weak side roaming menace when there's someone that he can cheat off of, because that allows him to, measure a play, use his tools to the max, play free safety a little bit. But your point about Chet's offensive footwork is the same on defense. His defensive footwork is excellent. And Chet has had a lifetime of guys trying to go at him. So in an era where post play is a little bit less refined than it used to be, he basically can expect the moves that he gets in the post. And he knows that if someone puts their shoulder into them, that like maybe they'll stumble, maybe they'll give him one pump fake, but if he stays tall and vertical, he's going to get a chance to block the shot. And that's why, when I think the Thunder started out 3-0 and then played the Nuggets and like lost by like 28, it was their first loss of the year. And that's to be expected because that's features a scorer who really knows what he's doing in the post and doesn't just sort of try to out muscle Chet. I mean, I talked to a guy on my podcast. He called Chet a praying mantis just because it's
Okay.
all a trap to guys trying to post him up because he knows what they're going to try to do. But you can see that over and over and over again on Chet's defensive tape in college or in the pros. And with Wembanyama, the defensive highlights are obviously incredible, but I think the Spurs fit for him is best for his defensive development because he's a guy who will like basic fundamentals like don't leave your feet on a pump fake, especially for Wemby, because when would you ever need to leave your feet really on a pump fake ever? And he has a problem with that right now. And that's the sort of thing that, again, will smooth out and will get cleaned up. And I would assume that eventually San Antonio will want to have him be their full-time five because that puts him in that leverages his offense the most because you'll have the most mismatches with fives guarding him. But until that time, yeah, I mean, I think what they're doing is fine. I think the defensive impact he's having, certainly you can still feel it. So yeah, it's just sort of a lot of free money right now. But yeah, anything else in their defense that stuck out to you?
I do think you're giving Chet a little bit too much grace in, some of these big guys, they have gotten him a little bit. Like the first time he played Drummond just destroyed him. And actually the second time Chet played him much, much better.
Oh yeah, Drummond crossed him, didn't he? Didn't he like cross him up on a transition and Chet went to the ground?
Yeah, and the play before he just like put him in the basket.
Mm.
And also, like, he was just shoving him on every single screen, just like pushing him out of the way. That's gonna be something that Chet needs to get used to, is like these big guys every single time. Yeah, that you go up to set a screen, they're gonna give you a little nudge. But and with Vic too, when they played the first time in the U19 game, like Victor just kind of destroyed him. But I think he has done like a pretty good job for the most part. The Thunder have tried to hide him a little bit too. Like I think when they played Embiid, they were trying to like give Chet some possessions off there. But for the most part, he's faced everyone. He's done a pretty good job, better than I think people would expect. But I think there are still like some times where just clearly, I mean, like he weighs 195 pounds. Like he's just not gonna be able to guard
Yeah.
some of these like super, super strong guys.
Well, and there may never be. I don't know that he will ever fully adjust to, again, the best of the best. That is certainly
Sure.
true. And shouts to Andre Drummond, of course.
Yeah.
Who's one of the strongest guys in the league. And then I think that
They'll tell you he's the best rebounder of all time.
I'm
It might be.
I'm not gonna disagree with him to his face. Certainly not. Why would I? But he, like, the main playoff question with Chet, and the Thunder will get to be in the playoffs this year, so it'll be easy to see, is how that goes over the course of a 7-game series. Because Chet is really good. He, like anyone who would be that skinny, he has his kind of bag of tricks when he's defending in the post. He'll kind of the way a defensive back tries to arrive at the same time as a ball. Maybe he'll wrap an arm around the hip and try to contest a pass from a quarterback and have it be close enough so that it doesn't get called. Chet does that too. He'll maybe try to put a hand on a hip so that a guy doesn't quite jump as high, but he's good at his timing's just very good and not getting called for it. He'll use his reach to like lean over the top of someone, but if they go up, he's very good about moving his hands out of the way so that the contact is sort of minimal. But that stuff, I would think, in a playoff setting, the refs might have a little bit less of a tolerance for it if they're seeing it game after game after game against the same guys. But yeah, against your Embiids or Jokic, Giannis, like or even like a really strong guy like Valanciunas, he's going to have real problems with that. But it's not just those types of guys who try to go at him. I think lots of guys see Chet as a target, and more often than not, Chet is able to adjust. But your point is certainly correct, that like the vulnerabilities are there. What's good about Chet is that the bet, again, that they make is that they're going to be able to get you on the other side of the floor because of how diverse his offensive game is. And I knew that was like the idea behind him when they took him, but some of these games with him and Shea are just unreal, the performances they can put up. Like, what do you see the Thunder as following sort of the traditional traditional playoff narrative of like, well, they'll make the first round this year, but they won't win a series. Then maybe next year they win a series and they just sort of have to go about their steps? Or do you think they could make a run this year where they're like in the conference finals?
Oh, that's spicy. I mean, the West is so good, so it's really hard to say. Yeah, I don't think I can get quite that far. I don't think it's like ridiculous to think that, but yeah, I mean, Denver's definitely going to be one of the teams, right? Unless they have some
Of
crazy
course.
injury.
Yeah.
I think the Thunder are like fourth right now in the West though. And I don't really believe a ton in the Mavs. I think they're three, and then the Wolves are one.
Mm.
So I don't know who you think is more real between like the Wolves and the Thunder. I'd probably take the Wolves. No offense to the Thunder, but obviously like their future is incredible.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. I think you're probably right. But I guess it just depends on matchup. If they get a first round series like against, I don't know, even if it's against like the Lakers, and I know the Lakers have guys strong enough to go at Chet, obviously. I just think it would be very interesting because the Lakers struggle with, offensive efficiency. That has been their problem this year. And I don't know that that's really going to get alleviated unless they make their annual Band-Aid trade at the deadline. And the proof of concept on offense for the Thunder is clearly there. And that has less to do with Chet than it does with SGA, but we'll see. I think they are in sort of the zone of matchups to where some might favor them to the point where maybe they could win a series and make things interesting in round 2. So
I'm slightly distracted here, Chuck. I'm watching the Bulls completely collapse against the Bucks down the stretch here in real time.
let's see. Oh,
Yeah.
down 1 with 20 seconds left.
Yeah, they were up for most of this fourth quarter, but so goes the Bulls. I was telling you before we started recording, it's like it's like your favorite sitcom where you know the ending, so you're very comforted by the
Well,
not
are you
stressing
comforted,
anymore.
Steph? Are you saying your comfort is the feeling that comes by you this season with Chicago?
Why do you think I've been watching so much Chet and Vic? We gotta we gotta distract ourselves from the pain here.
Yeah. Well, unless there's anything else you want to hit with them, you want to talk about any of the rooks that have really popped to you? Like if you're going to round out a first team all rookie squad, who would it be?
Uh, Putting me on the spot here, but I mean, obviously you have to have Ausar on there, like
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Rodman 2.0.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Lively's just been like pretty solid. I was actually surprised because again, like when you talk about big man defense, the expectation is not that they're gonna be able to step in there and be okay, but I think he's been pretty okay. I think that actually like his box score numbers are a little bit better than what he's actually been. Like I don't think he's been impacting the ball a ton, which like he probably I mean, he's gonna get better at that. It's just like knowing how to play drop in the NBA. But he's been really good rim protector, which is, what they are looking for from him. Who else would be on here? I guess
Um,
Hawkins.
Hockey.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Have
there's
you
so many
watched a
good
lot of
rookies like
Hawkins?
Sasser.
Yep.
Keontae George has been really good too. You were talking about your love for Jordan Hawkins. Just
Love
comes
him.
in, shoots the crap out of the ball.
Not just that, my friend. I think that Hawkins, like they've needed him because of the injuries to
Yeah,
Trey Murphy and to
yeah, he's
McCollum.
probably gonna get sent to the bench here once Murphy comes back in a
He's
short
coming
while.
off now, but even McCollum played his first game since the collapsed lung diagnosis yesterday, and
Yeah,
Murphy's coming back tomorrow. But even yesterday, Hawkins got like 24 minutes and Alvarado only got 9 or 10, which really surprised me because I know how much they love Alvarado. And Alvarado has been like an advanced stats darling since he's been there. But it's just one of those things, man, where if you can play, if a team can include a movement shooter who can more or less survive on defense, like so many guys just love to play with that player on offense that it's like you can't really bench him. Like it's too Zion just likes to have the option too much, or Ingram likes to have the option too much. And what I love about Hawkins is he is physically very tough. He's extremely well conditioned. He can play all day and all night. And his connecting passing is already like pretty good. When he's not just get the ball and chuck, he really can play and get his shots within the flow of an offense. And he understands like the value of ghost screening or the value of lifting, and how he and Ingram might just switch spots on the weak side just to sort of get a defender off the wrong foot to open up a driving lane more for Zion or something like that. He just has all that stuff kind of down already, which goes to UConn where he started. And, they were a juggernaut last year with him, but they run a lot of NBA sets and they play very, very hard and they defend very hard. And just his overall maturity, man, like he is something else. I think there was a tendency to look at him and think about in terms of archetypes, which us draft people do a lot, and be like, oh, well, Luke Kennard or Landry Shamet or something like that. But it's so valuable when you are just that little bit more athletic than those guys are, and you can really stay on the court, that it's like an amplifying effect to your team. Because now all of a sudden you could be instead of a 18-minute a night guy, now you're 25 to 30 where that shooting threat is on the floor. And man, when Trey gets comfortable and they start running lineups that has Zion and both those guys on it, good luck to anyone trying to, pick your poison in those sort of sets. So sorry, that was a long way of saying, yes, I love Jordan Hawkins.
It's really struck me about this rookie class. I mean, you can throw Hawkins in here too. It's just like the amount of shot making from a lot of these guys. It's hard to know. I mean, because we're only 18-ish games into the season, how much to take from this kind of stuff. I mean, I mentioned Cason Wallace is shooting 62% from the field, 59% from three, 91% from the line. Like, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? Obviously he's not going to shoot that well. So, but at the same time, like, that's just amazing. He's having a great year. Coulibaly, like, this guy was not supposed to be that good of a shooter. He's shooting 44% from three. He's like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. I mean, like, how can you expect that? And Marcus Sasser, he hasn't missed a shot either. So many of these guys, like, yeah, it's like impressive, but at the same time, I just don't really know what to make of it, long term.
I'll say that
Pajemski too, you could throw in there. He hasn't missed a shot either this year.
Well, and I think even Jaquez in his way, because I mean, Jaquez's shot making is like interior to mid range shot making. He hasn't really shot well from three because that has never really been his game as a prospect.
He's shooting 39%, man. Yeah, he's just like making crazy shots. Like, this is what I'm talking about. These guys that like we thought were not going to be great shooters, they just are not missing. All of these rookies. Yeah, I don't think Hawkins is going to shoot 39% at the end of the year, but it's just like, what are you supposed to do with it?
Yeah, I didn't know he was. I thought he was 1% last I checked. I guess he's had like a hot week, but it seems like he's just been hot the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, like 3-point shooting, it's not going to stabilize this early.
No, but I mean, Sasser. So, for example, Sasser, who is a lot of fun, he was an off the dribble, like 3-point serious threat at Houston the whole time that he was there. So it does not, and he is like 22 years old. So he is more physically ready to get into the season and, withstand the grind as a rotation player. So his success does not surprise me. The one that sticks out, I would say most is either, I mean, from where I had him ranked, it's Jaquez, because I didn't expect Miami to lean into his offense so much, but I guess since they always have sort of a rotating cast, because Jimmy's going to miss his 20 to 25 games every year anyway, and Hero already got hurt, they're like, look, you know how to score in the post, you know your footwork, we trust you, like, go cook. I think that is really cool, legitimately really cool that they gave him that much rope. And I think Utah with Keontae George is a little bit of the same. I mean, they have that weird guard rotation where, Clarkson, Sexton, Talen Horton-Tucker, like, none of these guys are really long-term answers, but it would be easier for a different coach to lean into those vets and bench Keontae, but they are playing him a lot. And I think that he has flashed as well. I don't think his shooting percentages are quite on the level of those other guys, but he has a lot of shooting talent. I mean, as soon as he gets a little bit stronger, I think you'll see some fireworks from him too.
Sorry, I'm super distracted. Alex Cruz just hit an insane three to send this game in overtime.
Dude, Caruso has done that like 4 times this year at the end of games, like crazy clutch stuff. All right, since you're focused on the Bulls, do you want to give any thoughts as to logical trade partners for them?
Logical trade partners. I think with Levine, like, there's not a ton of teams that actually like make sense for him. The Lakers offer is going to be out there. He's got a lot of clutch affiliations, and they need his scoring for sure. I think the Warriors are kind of an interesting one too. Like, I think they've lost 8 of their last 10 after starting 6-2. Klay Thompson's contract matches up with him pretty decently. So that could be like a upgrade. Klay's looked really, really bad this year.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two. And then with Caruso, like, I mean, he could go anywhere. Like, he's just such a gamer.
Do you think they'll actually trade Caruso?
Not after tonight. Like, they're beating the Bucks. And Arturas Karnisovas really does not want to go full rebuild.
No,
So,
and
we'll
that's,
see what happens in overtime here.
I see like, well, they're tearing it down because Levine requested out. And I just don't know. Like, first of all, him requesting out doesn't mean they're going to trade everybody, nor really should it. And is Caruso in the last year of his deal, or does he have another year at like 9 million or whatever bargain number they got him at?
He has one more year. It's partially guaranteed, but I mean, there's
There, you
pretty
pick
much a
that
hundred
up.
percent
Yeah.
chance. Yeah, he's like on a crazy good contract.
Yeah. So I just don't know why they would, you know, baby bathwater. I just don't know why they would throw him in unless some team is really willing to blow them away. Because if you trade Levine and get the right haul back, I don't know that, you really circle the wagons this season, but you can easily talk yourself into having like a pretty good team next year, depending on what you target, unless you're just so focused on getting draft capital. But Levine makes 40 million. So the contract's got to come from somewhere. I I've always thought since he made that claim that Detroit was going to be a logical partner because whatever Detroit's doing was not going
Yeah.
to work and they could try to target Ivy. Have you heard anything about whether or not Detroit would has interest? Number one, I know Levine scored 50 against them some game early in the season. And number two, if they would be disposed to including Ivy in any deal.
Well, I think for the Bulls, the key to winning any trade is to find a GM that's worse than you. And there's only maybe one or two of those in the league. So I think Detroit would be great. Like it would be a
Oh
trade of
boy.
desperation for both of those guys. Yeah, and Ivy's situation is so weird there. Who the heck knows like what's going on there with him and Killian and all this stuff.
Killian's still starting over him. Played
I
well
haven't
tonight
to
too.
answer your question though, like I mean, I haven't heard anything sourced or anything that they're talking to Detroit, but it would make sense. It would make a lot of sense for both teams.
That's what and even if they wanted to ship off Pat Williams, who obviously the ball has not gone in and he's had some sort of low light, you know, turnovers this year. I think if they wanted to say, even if they wanted to like not even ask for picks back or wanted to ask for very modest picks back so Detroit could keep everything and focus on getting, Ivy and maybe Isaiah Stewart and trading them Levine and Pat Williams and then, filling out contracts with Wiseman or Joe Harris or both or whatever the math takes to make that work.
I'm impressed you
Then
knew that
you
off the top of your head. Yeah, those are the two deals that would have to go in.
yeah,
Bagley or Wiseman, and then Joe Harris.
there you go. So you'd have in Chicago, you'd have Ivy, DeRozan still, Caruso still, Isaiah Stewart then, and Vooch. You'd still have Torrey Craig, Kobe White, Javon Carter, those guys. That to
Not a
me is
great
more.
team.
What's up?
Might be a slightly better team. It's still like not. I don't know. I mean,
I
maybe a
guess it
little
depends
higher.
on what you think about Ivy. I am still quite high on Ivy,
Oh yeah, I mean, I
although,
think that he could be good, but like as far as I'm just talking about like next year or whatever. Like, I mean, DeRozan's 34, I think. So like his
and they want to extend
window's
him, right?
pretty narrow. I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do with him.
Mm, okay. Well, has overtime ended yet? I was hoping that we could talk through that until this game was finally over.
It's 2 minutes left and the Bulls are up by one.
Okay, then let's do a couple gimmicks here. Uh would you, based on what you've observed only, would you rather have Ausar Thompson or Brandon Miller?
Ausar Thompson's like so cool. I gotta say him, but Brandon Miller, like nobody's talking about him. I
Yeah.
watched a lot. I mean, I watched like 3 of his games 2 and 3 weeks ago. I was like pretty impressed with him. Like he's taking on some pretty difficult defensive matchups, doing a decent job. Obviously like he's screwing up sometimes, but you can see like the potential there of what they were looking for him. Shooting the ball well, again, like one of these really good shot makers, 37% from three. They're running a lot of plays for him, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I didn't like that he, at least in the games that I saw, I don't know if this is like, I haven't seen all of his games, but when I was watching him, like he has a tendency to just like pull up for mid range rather than trying to get all the way to the basket. I don't know if that
Yeah.
was like a thing at Alabama, but yeah, that's like not great, I would say. Something he definitely has to cut out of his game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
He struggled in Alabama finishing like in the lane because he is long and wiry and not strong yet.
Yeah, I
Needs
mean
to really get stronger in his core.
they're running plays for him specifically to get downhill, and he's just like stopping, 15 feet from the basket, which like he's not running the play correctly. So
Yeah.
that's something he needs to clean up. But he had like pretty decent feel, I thought, other than that. And like I said, the defense and shot making was pretty good.
Yep. Yep. I mean, the whole question is whether or not you want a kind of boring, but like clearly NBA starting caliber wing who can shoot and has some size versus whatever the hell you think of Ausar. I agree that Ausar is like one of the 5 coolest players in the league, like already. But
6'7" David Robinson, I'll take that guy.
well, you've been citing percentages. Do you want to cite Asar's 12% from 3? You think
It's
that's
pretty
going to
bad.
normalize a little bit?
Yeah, I live in Atlanta, so I saw these guys at OT. I think I saw them 4 times
Mm-hmm.
live. It's so hard to tell like what's going to happen though, because the level of competition is just not very good. But yeah, I mean, you could tell even then, like they had a pro day, and his shot just like does not look right. You know?
That's why when you say David Robinson, that's no joke. I think they should play him at 5, not as a starter, but like they should
Love it.
try that look in games to try to see what would happen. I'm sure they'd get killed in the short term, but like if a guy who can rebound that well for his position and who can cover ground that well, it's worth a shot, or at least play him at 4 all of the time, as opposed to, these double big monstrosities that they play him
Yeah,
with.
I mean
But
that's the big problem with Detroit, right? It's just like their spacing has been so bad. So like they're definitely gonna have to find some creative ways to use him. I mean, he's not like a plug and play player, right?
no. And I think if you use him strictly as an off ball wing, that is kind of like we were going back, we were saying about Wembanyama, there's just a natural decline in usage unless it's someone who can create off the dribble really well. Ausar has a really cool handle and he can dribble around people, but it's just too much to ask when they're going to sag off you so much that you create your own offense.
Sure.
The guys who have kind of rough jumpers either become like the NBA just sort of forces them either to become an initiator who can get downhill and score, or become a 5 who is the other side of that pick and roll combination. So there's lots of ways that Detroit team can go. I'm sure that Troy is going to get fired, sooner rather than later. And so it's going to depend on the evaluation of the person coming in and what they think of Cade and all of that. But this is a cool introduction for Ausar and for all of us to him, but something I think kind of drastic needs to happen with them, because you just can't. I mean, the shot's so rough that you just can't be like, well, he's your starting small forward, and then just go into that, because that's just so hard to win that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with him, with that whole team. I mean, yeah. I like the
Yeah.
Pistons. I mean, I do like the talent.
You do?
It just does not fit very well together.
You like Duran?
Oh, I love Jordan. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they killed the Bulls. I think that might have been like their last win.
I like Duran too, but I also think, well, speaking of last wins, they're up 3 here with 36 seconds left. Man, what a
Yep.
Chucking Darts exclusive, for people are going to be hearing this after this game is already over. But
Yeah, I'm trying to normally like I am semi-emotional, I would say, when I'm watching these Bulls games. So I'm trying to keep it together here on the stream.
it actually might be better for the playback if you just let yourself go, and we got some
Yeah.
tears of joy here. But uh the when you're talking about how the talent doesn't fit together, like I think Duran is a really cool player if you were to match him with an electric pick and roll operator, because the thing with Cade is that it's hard for him to get downhill, but he's this really good passer and would be a really good connecting passer, let alone, pick and roll operator. But he can throw really good lobs, but Duran is sort of 6'10", not 7 foot. And though he has a lot of strength, he's not like super springy. So there just isn't the natural chemistry between the two of them in terms of what they both do well, for there to have been like a leap for both of them at the same time. That's what's a bummer, is like I could see Duren becoming like a really good starter, if not an all-star somewhere. I could see obviously Cade doing it, but them together just I don't know. It bums me out. That's all. Bums me out. I mean, they started Isaiah Livers tonight in part to just get some sort of spacing there, but really hard. And I think Ivy and Cade could work, but in order to do that, the ball's going to need to be in Ivy's hands like more and more. And so that's its own set of growing pains. It's just a big bummer.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't succeed in the NBA these days without if you don't have good spacing, which they've definitely shown. It's early
So,
part of the season.
yeah, speaking of which, as we look at all these other guys, I think a commonality between a lot of these rookies is the situations they are in are very good. Lively in Dallas playing with
Yeah,
Kyrie
it's
and
true.
Luka, really, really good. But one that I think arguably is not good or was set up to be not good was Anthony Black in Orlando for a similar sort of spacing concern. Now, Orlando's winning a lot of games. Anthony, I think, was hot shooting three to start. I don't know if he's cooled off. He's at
26%.
26. So, yeah, he has cooled off. And I think, Cole Anthony's a 6-man of the year candidate. Jalen Suggs playing really well. Fultz has been hurt, but is coming back. I think Anthony might get squeezed, but what do you think of what you've seen from him and his fit there?
I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched. I have a spreadsheet here with all the games I watched. How many times have I watched the Magic this year? I've watched. Well, okay, I've watched 6 of their games. That's not bad. Not whole
There you go.
games. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he hasn't really stood out to me that much. He did have a play. At the end of the Bulls game, he missed a free throw that would have basically like sealed the win for them. And it looked like the Bulls were going to steal that one. I can't remember if that was one of the games they won. But no, that was the one that Paolo hit the game winner over
Yeah.
Caruso.
Yeah, I remember
But
that. That
yeah,
was
they
in
panned.
Chicago, right?
Yeah, they panned to Anthony Black on the bench, and he was just like in tears, like he had a towel over his face, and he was just like, yeah, crying for I don't know a while. Which I thought was like kind of cool actually, like that he cares that much just about like some random regular season game.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, I thought that was like good attitude. Other than that, yeah, I don't really have any strong Anthony Black takes, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, like I said, because he plays so hard and because that team has taken on such an identity of all being really hard or pardon me, playing really hard and playing with such a commitment to defense. I think that he'll hang on to whatever 10 to 13 minutes a night that he can. But I don't know. I don't know I guess the future drafting him at 6, the future intent is to start him and Suggs in the backcourt. And that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I guess we'll see how it goes. Not really going to criticize the Magic since they're 13-5 and have looked as good as they have.
Suggs
But
has looked great.
Suggs is
Yeah.
the man, dude. I mean, he,
Finally learned how to shoot.
yeah,
He was a great defender last year. He's even better this year.
he is kind of like the sort of the blue chip version of Anthony Black to me. Anthony's more of like a natural point guard, but whereas Anthony, I think, projects to be a solid defender, Suggs has sort of the athletic power to be a great defender. And they both have really, really good feel, but I think Suggs has sort of more shooting talent and had more shooting talent going into the league. So I always kind of thought that Anthony was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of the archetype of what he was. Not quite big enough to be a jumbo initiator, not quite talented enough as a shooter to space around better players. But we'll see. We'll see. Would love to be proven wrong about him. All right, man. The Bulls pull this out or what?
Yeah, they're gonna win. There's like 6 seconds left. They're up 5.
Okay. Very good. So let's see. I would say
Yeah, I
if
think
you had go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say like I think I do have to bounce pretty quickly here, Chuck. So we have
It's
like
okay.
yeah, like one or two more points you want to hit here.
We'll just do let's go to Bilal. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um Did you know much
I must
about Bilal
confess I'm
coming in?
watching the Wizards mostly for Jordan Poole. But I
Yeah,
have
who
caught some
wouldn't?
Bilal.
But yeah, what are your impressions of him? How high are you on him?
How high am I on him? I mean, he's an awesome defender. You know, I love defense, so I'm a sucker for that. Just like such great tools. Yeah, like just very disruptive, which I think is important to be a good defender these days. And then, like I said, like it just seems like every time he's letting go of the ball, he's making making it, which helps the eval. Yeah, he was pretty good in summer league too. I don't know if you caught any of his games in summer
Yeah,
league.
I saw a couple. Yeah, I
Yeah,
ever since the Wiz draft, like I was high on him. I think I had him 10th in the class. But when the Wiz drafted him, I was so pumped because I figured like, well, he is clearly the organizational priority now because this is a new regime. It's their first pick. This is clearly a swing on sort of a home run kind of talent if it all were to come together. Uh it's a bummer that Poole and Kuzma soak up as much as they do. And like Denny's a good player, so you can't like you still need to play him 30 minutes a night. So I want Bilal to get the chance to be a starter at some either this year or next. I don't want it to
yeah.
take 3 years before he gets that extended run.
I wonder if they
But
trade Denny. Denny would be like a really good rotation player on a good team. I feel like
yeah, I
good two
think
way
he would
player.
too. But he's on a really good contract. I think they'd want a lot for him.
That's
So I
true.
don't know
Yeah.
if they'll get that, but someone raised
Yeah, his agent did not do a good job with him.
yeah, I agree. But I think Bilal, in terms of all these guys that we've talked about, apart from Vic and Chet, Bilal is a guy where if he gets the chance and has some shooting around him, I could see like a big leap for him to where he becomes like an all-star level player. I think
Okay.
that he has that amount of talent and his development curve is that steep. I mean, he doesn't turn 20 until like June or something like that. I mean, he is really young. And the fact that he's already hanging and that 2 years ago he was like 6'1" or whatever, like I just think that he has a lot of skill. A lot of skill.
We should shout out one of your projects here, Chuck. I know you put a ton of time into what was it, your top 100 prospect rankings? Was he
Yeah,
on
yeah,
there?
yeah,
Was
yeah,
Bilal on
yeah.
there? Or was there like a cutoff date?
No, it's always the last three draft classes.
Okay.
So
So what was
like
Bilal on there? Do you remember?
so Brandon Miller and Bilal and Ausar they were like 25, 24, 23. And
Okay.
I think I preferred Brandon the most out of the three of them, but three draft classes, you divide the number by three, that's roughly what I think you are in an average class, which means I thought they were all around like a number 8-ish level pick. And that's what was kind of cool about doing the exercise is it forces you to realize like kind of what to expect out of a given draft slot if my rankings are accurate, not to say that they were, but that was sort of the goal of it. And so yeah, they were sort of in a category of they're going to get a lot of chances to be sort of the third best player on a really good team, maybe better, but stuff kind of has to come together for them to move up a level. And so that's sort of what I think about all of
Yeah, if anyone listening has not checked that out, I
them.
mean, tremendous piece of content there. I'm always a sucker for the stories that other people are not doing. And obviously, like that took a ton of work and it was very, very well done. So yeah, good
Well,
on you on that, Chuck.
thanks, man. Do you think you're going to do top 100 defenders again next summer? Update it?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's gonna be a lot better because yeah, nobody has ever done a list like that before. So it definitely was not perfect, but I was like I was pretty proud that I caught a lot of these guys. Like I think a lot of fans took offense that I ranked one of their guys, 65th or something. But just making the list, making the top 100 is like quite an accomplishment when you think about
Yeah.
it. I think, yeah,
I
I had Tatum like 63 or something. The Celtics fans were totally flipping out. I mean, I think that's pretty fair. But yeah, like, somebody like Jalen Suggs, I don't know what I had him ranked, probably maybe like in the 50s, which is too low. But if you ask like 99% of NBA fans, what is Jalen Suggs defense like? they have literally no idea, you know?
Yeah.
So just like acknowledging that this guy is like a plus defender, I think is like a good step forward in the discourse.
Well, and there's individual defense versus team defense. Defense. How malleable are you between schemes? Like,
Yeah,
are you a
sure.
ceiling raiser? Like, it's such fertile ground to cover that it's awesome, and that's why draft work is the same way. Just the act of making a board and going through however many prospects it takes, like you learn a lot. Whether or not you end up being right, you learn a hell of a lot. So,
I want to ask you a question. I heard
yeah.
that this year in particular, making a draft board is just going to be like extremely challenging, just narrowing it down to the right 60 guys. Do you feel that way?
So I'm in my beginning stages. I'm certainly aware of that reputation of the class and that like it's not very good. That makes me the most excited. Like this past class was a lot of fun because you had a lot of athleticism and a lot of interesting talents. But it was kind of boring that like Victor was the number one player and that wasn't like no one's going to challenge that. No one's going to try to be like an edgelord and be like, no, I have Victor fifth. Like no one's going
Yeah.
to do that. So when there's more of an opportunity for a difference of opinion, that makes there's like higher stakes to doing the work. So I'm really looking forward
Makes
to
sense.
doing that. Really looking forward to doing that. And there's like discovering these guys like Arizona has a kid who I like named Kylan Boswell, who turns 19 in April and is like a good point guard now. And he's strong, but he's not a crazy athlete. He's like 6'1". If you wanted to really dream on him, you'd be like, well, maybe he's a Brunson type someday or whatever. And there are people who have him in the lottery, and there are people who have him in like the late second round. And so when the opinion differs that much, that is what is really like the spice in the work and what I look
Yeah.
forward to doing. Yeah.
You want to go on the record where you have this kid? See if you're right or wrong.
I don't have a board yet. I don't have a board to rank yet. I probably won't have one until I only officially debut mine like the day of the draft. I really hold back my cards, but I would say that based on what I've seen, I'll have him in the top 20. I would say. Yeah. Which is good because other people would say that he needs to go back to school, but not me. So,
yeah.
But anyway, thanks, man. Thank you. I'll let you go. Thank you all for listening to this meandering episode. I really appreciated it. But we got a lot of Chet and Wemby in there. Shouts to the Bulls taking down the Bucks. The wagons have been circled. And
you have to let me talk about it
Steph.
because there's not many of these wins. There's number 6 win.
Yeah, man, you're glowing. It's so lovely to see you so happy.
The equivalent of like a perfect game in baseball. It only happens once every 20 years.
Steph, thank you so much. Check out Steph's stuff on Twitter, obviously at Sporting News, at Steph Noh. This has been Chucking Darts. It's okay to be wrong about sports. Find your dartboard and start chucking. Thank you.